Hi everyone, it's Max, CEO of Smith & Sons. I don't always wear a party hat, but today I am because it is our 100th episode. And I really want to thank everybody that's in the Business for Builders community. We're always looking to build value. We want to make sure that we are adding that value in a big way. And it certainly is a heck of a milestone, and we have enjoyed putting the show together, and we're looking forward to many more episodes. Enjoy this podcast or this video. We've got Joe Quattrone coming up, and he is the head of education. He's the head of Sasha West, and that's the Sasha group within VaynerMedia. And I think you're going to get a lot out of this one because it relates to marketing. I don't do a lot on marketing because, I'm not the one with the marketing prowess, but I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. How old are you going to be before you start to experience life like you want it? I want to tell you right now, whether you like it or not, there is a better way to do business. Hi everyone, welcome to the Business for Builders podcast. Welcome to you if you're in YouTube land. Trust you're doing good. My name's Max. I'm the CEO at Smith & Sons, and we have got a treat today. We are in our 100th episode, which seems like a far cry from when we did get started. And to help us celebrate that, we have got a special guest in the house, virtually, of course. I want to make a special welcome to Mr. Joe Quattrone, who's the head of education, head of Sasha West and the Sasha Group. Welcome, Joe. I appreciate you being with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Look, I want to break the ice. The first question I've got is, how did you come up with Super Quattrone? Was that something that you gave yourself, or was that something that you got donned?
It's actually pretty relevant to the title of this podcast. So when I was going through college and grad school, I worked at the Home Depot, which is a big store in America. And I was studying marketing at the time, and social media was up and coming. It was like a rising phenomena in the United States. And I started a blog, and it was all about superstores and big box retailers and stuff.
Right.
Because I thought for some reason, because I worked at a big box retailer like the Home Depot, that I knew a thing or two. And I thought that I was going to go deeper in working in super center type places like Walmart and Target and all that kind of stuff. But the name was just easy. It rolled off the tongue for me. So I never wound up kind of pursuing any further career as a journalist or a social media influencer in the big box retailer space. But I never really felt like changing my profile across any other platform. People just knew me as that. So I just kept it going.
Righto. And you did mention to me at one point, you said your dad was a general contractor?
Yeah, he just recently retired. He wasn't his whole career. He started his career as a mainframe computer technician. He used to work at a place called Digital Equipment Corporation, or he called it DEC for short. But after about 20 or 30 years in that profession, he decided he hated his job and he was miserable. And he switched careers and started a little handyman company. And that grew into more of like a general contractor type operation. And he did that for another 15, 20 years towards retirement, as well as he also played bass guitar in an oldies band for 20, 30 years. So he was just a man of many skills.
And so did he beat you up for not going into, or because his digital background, he was okay with you going away from more of a hands-on blue collar type trade into something more digital? Or did he give you a bit of stick for that?
Of course, the option was there. If I wanted to take over his business, he would have gladly groomed me to become his replacement. I just didn't have any interest in it. So I was really trying to explore what was interesting to me when I was in my early 20s before I went off and started studying stuff. And I still was influenced by him quite a bit. But it was in a different way. The thing that I started to really gravitate towards, that I was interested in what my dad and my uncle and all my family members brought to the table, was I saw this weird fascination for collecting things. To my dad and my uncle and my family members, they used to collect and restore old Coca-Cola machines, cars. My dad used to collect Mustangs, Corvettes, My uncle used to collect old Porsches and Triumph motorcycles, and I started thinking to myself, like, what in the world is the fascination that people have with brands? And so I just went and kind of explored that rabbit hole for a while, and just decided to really pursue a career in that.
And that was where it sort of then you obviously morphed in with all the technologies and everything. It sort of slowly got sucked into the digital side of things.
Well, I got sucked into the digital and social media side right away. When I got out of grad school, I was working at a place called Audi of America. You know, Audi, the car brand, the four rings, Audi.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they have an America, North American division or whatever. And I was working at their corporate headquarters, not directly for them. I was working for an agency based out of San Francisco, but they hired me to be the on-site account manager. And within 3 months, because I was the only person in my 20s that was on the floor at Audi, their CMO Scott Keogh pulled me into his office and threw an article, a New York Times article, down on his desk and said, "Hey, if this guy, meaning Barack Obama, can become leader of the free world using social media," this was before he became president. It was like when he was running for office. But everybody pretty much knew he was going to become president. He said, "If this guy can be the leader of the free world using Facebook groups, I wonder if we can use social media to sell cars." And then that's how I got started. I worked for him after hours for 6 to 9 months, just 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. kind of work. Just I couldn't do it during my day job because it would have taken up all my time. But I did a bunch of research for probably about 5, 6 months, and then eventually he wanted to get serious and pursue some funding for it. So I spent some time working with a couple of people on my team, and we built a go-to-market strategy, which included, a monetary ask so we could build a team, we could hire an agency, um, and that's kind of what got me sucked into the world of social media circa 2008.
Yeah. So what I love about that is your original. You've got a bit of a general contractor understanding, but then and this is kind of what we're doing. Here at Smith and Sons and Business for Builders is you've got that you understand the blue collar, but then you've got a really awesome understanding of digital. And I think as a blue collar carpenter, I mean, I'm a carpenter by trade. There's such a disconnect, and I still see it today. I've got guys in my organization that just go, "I'm glad you're doing digital because I don't even want to know about it." And so, to what we're trying to do for the greater contractor community, I think, and I love the fact that you're in the house. And what I'm really interested in, this is why we can get into some Q&A later on, is it's like, I know what I do for my general contractors, but I can't, it's so hard for me, Joe. It's probably one of the things that I don't double down on. I can double down on operations, and I can double down on checklists and everything to do with running a contracting company. But if the front end and the messaging and the branding and everything like that is not established, it really does make it a challenge, to build a general contracting business. Now, in the old days, sure, newspaper and radio might have been the deal, but as Gary says, it's all overpriced. And why wouldn't you cut the middleman out? So I'm really looking forward to, our Instagram and our TikTok audience, contractors and general contractors throwing out going, "Hey, I want to add value to their situation." It's like, what could I do today? What's my takeaway for social? And I encourage all the time, just look at Smith & Sons, look at business, and just copy kind of as best you can. But, a lot of them just have this resistance to doing it. And I understand because I've got a great team. And I know that it makes the difference. And I didn't start with that. I mean, it was me by myself with one camera. But I'm looking forward to, because you've made mention Audi America. You worked on social campaigns with Budweiser, Bud Light, J&J, Baby, and Stella Artois. So, I love beer. Beer's good. So that's contractors love beer.
I'm aside from just having a dad that was a general contractor, he actually hired me as a subcontractor for many summers. I used to go because my specialty at Home Depot was doors and windows and millwork, like,
Right.
doing trim and all that kind of stuff. In the summer months, I'd go home on the weekends and I would install full houses of windows and doors for him. And so I know that world a little bit. I know kind of what people are going through and kind of how hard you guys work and what a labor of love it is. And I'll leave you with one anecdote because I feel like I've scaled the mountaintop to some extent in terms of like the world of marketing.
Yeah.
one of the things that I miss about those summers, looking back on it, is you can finish a day and realize that you completed a project and you did the best job you could do. In my world, there's so much gray matter, right? Everything is balls in the air, and like, you know, happy customers, angry customers. You gotta raise up your employees. You got tons of campaigns and market. It's not as simple as it once was in my life, where it was like you'd go on a job, you had one job to do, you'd finish the job, and then you could finish their day with the peace of mind knowing that you did the job the way it was supposed to be done. Right. So that's one thing that I admire about, blue collar workers, people that are in trades, stuff like that, is that there's a craftsmanship to it. And there's not 1,000 different ways to do it. There's one really good way to do it. And there's always that pursuit of finishing jobs, which I admire a great deal.
Yeah, I think a lot of, because I look back on my 30 plus career, in the construction industry, and I think because I was fortunate to have a boss or do my apprenticeship with the guy who's really successful financially today, it was always about the money. And it's very contrary or, different to what Gary talks about as far as, figuring out what makes you happy. I never gave the happiness side of it a thought for like 2 decades, dude. Like, it was ridiculous. It was money, 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 money. And then you wonder why you're not happy. However, when I quit focusing on money and then went across to really probably scaling things down, exactly what you just said, you'd go to work, you'd back the trailer in, you'd turn the radio on, you would roll the gear out, you would go and do your job. And then at the end of the day, you would feel a high level of, if you were just patient. And that was the other thing, which I never knew, was patience. So, that's one thing I preach a lot about today, is because I think we underestimate how much time that we, have got to build this. And so, yeah, there's no question that for me, the change going from a general contractor, let's say, into an office as a CEO, working with creatives and franchise sales and everything like that, you do go home at the end of the day and you can't look over your shoulder and see something you've created. I don't even know what I do from day to day. Like, I'm just managing departments and making sure everyone's equipped and, putting out fires. And you don't see anything tangible, and it wrecks me a little bit. It's like, if this doesn't work, I think I'll go back building houses, because I literally love the satisfaction.
There's one thing that comes close. When you have something that you do, that you put out into the world in social media or digital marketing, and it goes viral, that is the one thing that comes the closest to it. Because then you can go in and you can see the results, you can see articles being written, you can do Google searches, and you can see all types of people talking about your brand. But that's probably the closest it comes to that feeling where you put something out and then you can kind of sit back and say, wow, I did that. That's pretty cool.
Interesting insight. We'll keep on chugging away, because that'll motivate me a lot. I'm like, right, I'm going to build viral videos with my team, because that's kind of the,
you might, you never know,
the proxy home. It was interesting. I think I was introduced to you. I got to give a bit of a shout out to my old mate in Calgary, Jeff Humphreys. He was, I caught him on one of the 4Ds, and sort of, understood that he was fairly local. We're in British Columbia, just one province over. And so I reached out to Jeff and we had a good conversation. I've had him actually on the podcast. And so he was how I got to know you. But where I stumbled over Gary's information was via a guy by the name of Kerwin Ray. I don't know if that name rings a bell. Anyway, he rolled out a video. I think he might have been in Las Vegas for an event, and he did, and it was big on Snapchat. And it's ironic because I never did get into Snapchat. So when TikTok came around, I'm like, I'm getting on that train. But it was interesting. It was just per chance, and so. Like I explained off air before we got started, a lot of that was per chance, but I think there was very much an identification with Gary's philosophies, the fact that he shits on the whole school program, and I wasn't a very good student. You might have been a good student, Joe, but I was definitely not a good student.
It depends. In high school, I got C's. It wasn't until college when I realized that I had to pay for my own college that I started getting A's. I started applying my intellect a little bit more, but I was average until I had to pay for it.
Yeah, interesting. Got a bit of incentive. Yeah. So when we just talked about before, you sort of said, well, I've got, two bosses, I think, or two jobs. And, how do you go? Have you mastered the art of balancing work life and family life? Because like you said, you got three kids. And so there's some pretty serious demands. Have you got a structure, or you just kind of just throw a bunch of balls up in the air and figure it out on the fly? Because that's what I do.
Well, there's a lot there. I would definitely not say I am a master of anything. I like most people, I just try to get through my days and weeks and survive. I do, but obviously, I'm operating at a pretty high level in my career. So yeah, I do have some structure around it. I'm a very organized person in general, but yeah, I mean, in terms of like balancing multiple jobs and stuff like that, it's really about prioritization for me. So like understanding at any given time, like what is driving the business forward for my company, um, really kind of dictates how much effort and kind of resourcing I put around certain tasks. Um, when I was running, I've since actually really recently relinquished my role on the West Coast. I hired my replacement out there. So I'm pretty much all in on education and training for the Sasha Group right now. But even in that role, I have probably three jobs. So I've got products that I manage, like 4Ds and Stork, which is an online membership platform around digital marketing. I've got services, which are, where we run social media for certain types of brands, predominantly personal brands, small startups, things like that nature. And then I've got knowledge, which is we build, we run all of the Sasha Group's social media practices, properties, which is more towards digital education. But then we also build all of the curriculum, all of the training and tracking for all of our employees across the whole entire company. So I sit on top of three major kind of departments within my division, and in any one of them at any given time could be blowing up and need my attention. And that's kind of where, when I was talking about like really understanding what's moving the business forward in a major way, this year we really built out the service category within the education division to accommodate this massive priority for Gary, which was organic social media content, right? So creating retainer businesses for clients where they're not utilizing paid. They're predominantly doing TikTok and other vertical video platforms. If it's B2B, more like LinkedIn and stuff like that. And it's something that hadn't really existed to a great extent at our company for years, mainly because the world of social media had de-emphasized organic social media since 2014. But I'd say the past 2 years with the pandemic and with TikTok becoming the biggest deal in the world, now the world was changing and Gary was trying to get clients to adapt to a life in which they didn't have to spend a ton of money on paid media, but we didn't have a product that was really good for that. So we had to build that out for the Sasha Group, and then we had to go, create pricing around it, put it into market, have like some flagship accounts that we were performing those duties on. And so, yeah, I'd say that has taken up probably 60-70% of my time. So really it's just about prioritization, knowing, you can't, there's a quote, I don't know where it came from, but talking about majoring in the minors. If you're familiar with like professional sports leagues, there's usually like some sort of a professional entity, and then there's a minor league system. If you spend too much of your time focused on the things that matter the least to your business, you don't wind up pushing your business forward. So as a leader, we can't necessarily spend our time tripping up over some of these like little ankle biter projects that we have. That's why we have to build teams that are well versed in being able to tackle a multitude of different types of projects. But we as leaders, we need to focus on the long-term things that are going to make our business successful over years, not necessarily, firefighting in the trenches and trying to make sure that all of our customers are happy every single day of the week. Like that is important, but hire somebody to do that, right? And make sure that they understand what is important, what's important for you to be doing versus what's important for them to be doing.
Yeah, I think that's, delegation is maybe what you're alluding to, Joe. And look, I think as tradespeople, nobody can do it as good as me, Joe. Like, that is probably our biggest hang up. And so, I do sort of, in conversation arm wrestle with GCs about that. And I'm saying, well, you're going to bottleneck your own business if you continue with that attitude. And I don't know what else to say about it. But what I find, having watched Gary since, late 2015, the winter of 2015, and you hear the numbers that he occasionally drops. Well, we've got 380 staff, and then we've got 650 staff and 1,000, and I don't know what he's at now, over 2,000 across the whole group or more, whatever it is. That alone, I've got guys right now that are battling to get one carpenter, lead carpenter. Like, it's such a challenge in the general contracting world. We forget about marketing. I mean, we'll cover that too. But yeah, there's a lot of blame going around. Well, it's, our prime minister's made it too easy for people to sit at home and get paid and all of these things. But I keep saying there's got to be a percentage of really good quality people that are out there. We've just got to find them and we've just got to serve them well. But, I did a video about hire quickly, fire quickly on TikTok and got destroyed. Oh boy, they didn't like that.
We have the same problems in advertising and marketing, and it's really hard to find the kind of talent you need at the price you want to pay right now. It's probably the biggest imbalance in the hiring market that I've ever seen. Obviously, it's been reversed in the other direction. There's been markets where there's plenty of people that can't get a job because the jobs are too scarce. Now we have a bunch of jobs that we can't fill because people don't want them, or they don't want them under the conditions that they're in. So I'm not sure exactly what the cause of that is, but I have a suspicion that the world has just changed such a great deal. And the thing that I find really complex about the workforce right now is, especially within my universe, I don't know necessarily if it's the same within yours, is that we're still operating off of a model of labor that was created for working on factory floors, right? Like the whole idea of a 9 to 5 and working, 8 to 12 hours a day away from your family, like that was something that was created to like make widgets at factories or mine coal and stuff like that. There's a much different way to work in today's society. And I think a lot of people found that out during the pandemic, is like, if you can work an office job and that's what your thing is, like I'm much more productive working from home than I am in office. And if I look at an entire week, I don't need to look at it through the lens of a 40-hour week. Like I need to look at it through the lens of like, how do I efficiently get my job done? That might take 20 hours. It might take 80 hours. I'm not sure, but we have to figure out. I don't think what we've done for the past 100 years is what we need to do for the next 100 years.
And do you think that's applicable or appropriate for everybody, let's say in the Vayner group, or are you just talking from a management position? Because for you, it's not, location is not massively important. But is it important
not for everybody, but it is possible for most. And I say that because creating content, right? Like that is something that, you can do together. You can do it alone. You could connect with people virtually. Like there's a lot of ways to create content, but there's also like a personal preference side of things. If you're younger, if you're single, if you're not married, for instance, if you live in a city, if you're really still trying to learn about who you are as a person, the idea of cohabitation, being around other people, like kindred spirit, fellowship, all those kind of things, it can lead to better work, right? When you're a little bit older and more established and your priorities are different, you're married, you've got kids, all that kind of stuff, like it's a great treat and it's a pleasure to be able to do a little bit of both, right? Like I'm fortunate because I get to live, I built a house to work out of. I've got 2 offices in my house, one for me and one for my wife, who also works from home. But I'm also in a position in life where I can travel a lot for work. I can go to the office. I can see my team whenever I want. Like, and so for me, that's the optimal balance. But like, I'm not, crazy to think that would work for everyone.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, you've got to, our viewers, you got to figure out what works for you. And there might be seasons that you go through where, you've got to double down and everyone's got to be in the room. And then as the business and yourself develop, then maybe you could sort of think about doing something more remotely as opposed to sort of being in the
My
house.
dad was a contractor. He only worked 6 months a year. He hated working in the wintertime. So he literally he was happy just making enough money in 6 months to live off for 12, you know?
Right, right. And so you're in Nashville? Is that what you said to me?
Yeah, I'm outside of Nashville. I'm in Williamson County, so about 30 minutes south of Nashville.
And does Gary still have an office at Chattanooga?
Yeah, we do.
Right, right. And so that's your closest office. If you had to go in, that's where you're going to, or you
Yeah,
end
I
up
go
in.
in there every once in a while, probably once or twice a month.
Yeah,
I don't manage any people that work from there though. So
right.
the need for me to go in there is really just it's when I want to go in. We do have a production studio there, so sometimes I'll host events there or I'll meet my team members there and we'll film content. But yeah, that's it's great. It's about 2.5 hours from where I live. An easy drive going up the mountains. It's beautiful out there. So I love going there.
Yeah, mate, tell me about the company culture that you've seen both, where it started with, with what Gary did, because I hear him often talk about, the fact that he is not confrontational as much as people think he's fairly bullish, but like when it comes to dealing with, maybe team members and things like that, he often talks about how he pats a guy on the back on Monday, tells him he's doing a good job and then has to let him go or get someone else to fire him, at the end of the week. Tell me about because it has to be something that permeates the whole organization coming from Gary as he sets the temperature. How does it, have you seen the evolution of culture from way back when you started with Gary 9 years ago to what it is today?
Yeah, sure. I have seen a lot of different changes in culture. When I started, culture was something that was more driven into the organization. Like Gary, it was the most important thing, right? And he talked about it a lot, and it was almost kind of manufactured, though, right? And I think in a lot of the early days, there was this sense that you know, you couldn't say negative things, right? You had to always be positive. And what that led to was more kind of bad behavior. And Gary talks about this, so I'm not really like breaking any news here.
Yeah.
The kind of behavior it led to was a lot of, delusion by people because when you're always constantly reinforcing positivity for the sake of positivity, then it's hard for you to give critical feedback to people on their performance, right? So that when people did wind up getting fired, they'd be completely taken they'd be completely taken aback and not know why. And they'd there were tears and all kinds of stuff, and they didn't think it was fair. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's fair either, right? Then we went through like a phase where, I mean, fortunately for us, that was like those early days coincided with like Gary really learning his own approach to what advertising agencies should be run like. He more ran the early days of VaynerMedia like a software startup, right? Like a product marketing kind of outfit where he was only really concerned with like top line revenue. So it was top line revenue at all costs, maximum levels of positivity. Nobody said anything bad, and because of that, it kind of felt almost like a cult to outsiders, right? Like it almost like just like what are these people, what are they all about? They're all like saying like all these super positive things, they've got smiles up to their ears. So it really felt like something like working at like a Google or a Facebook where everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid, right? Then we went through like a period where we started to clamp down and start to learn. We hired more senior talent, we started learning about operations. We needed to go through a phase where instead of focusing on top line revenue, we had to get more profitable. And so we overcorrected and things got a little weird because for the first time we weren't all sunshine and rainbows and smiles to the ears and stuff like that. There were layoffs, there were things happening, and the vibe had definitely changed for a couple of years. And then somewhere along the line, I think it was probably after Claude had come back and taken on her chief heart officer role, we started experimenting with this idea of kind candor, and really being comfortable in the idea that performance is going to be a higher priority within our company, right? it's probably maybe even higher than culture or happiness and stuff like that. Like, you still have to get your job done at the end of the day. That's the most important thing. Like, Gary's going to have a direction he wants to point the company at, and we're going to get it done. Oh, and by the way, we're going to do it with a smile on our face. So it was just a little bit of a wrinkle and a nuance that kind of flipped the script upside down. And so I think most of us realize that, we can be happy every day. We can go in and approach everything from an optimistic perspective, but we can't necessarily just rely upon that to keep ourselves employed, right? Like, we always have to be climbing, we always have to be striving, we have to be pushing, we have to take accountability for, at the end of the day, what makes us happy, right? Like, we're all in this together, we're invested in this, and if it doesn't grow, then nobody's going to be happy, you know.
Mm.
So I think it's evolved in a much more mature way. It's kind of like anybody. It's just like growing up in life. Like, you're not as mature when you're 18 as you are when you're 25, as you are when you're 42, right? You start to reflect back. You start to think back on your life, and you start thinking about how reckless you might have been, or how, you know, how much more pointed and operational you need to become to be able to juggle all the balls to build the big thing you're trying to build. Like, I'm much more responsible at 43 than I was when I was 18, but I've got way more responsibility at 43 than I did when I was 18. And that's how we feel as a, more mature organization.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's why I talk to, especially on TikTok. I'm messaging, or I'm the message that I put out is about these 18 and 20 and 22-year-old, carpenters or tradespeople that want to go and kick ass in the general contracting world, and they just don't understand that there's a lot of subliminal challenges, some really, cute nuances that they don't even know exist, which is what applies, challenge to them personally. They don't allow themselves to develop, they're trying to develop a business at this rate when really personally they're just not developing as quick.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
with your position now, you mentioned to me at some point, I don't know if I saw this in your bio or whatever, that you've got. I mean, how many of that 2,500, team members do you manage within your group? Because I'm really interested to talk to you about what your sandbox and how many. Because it's managing people. I kid you not. I mean, maybe it's not you or it's everyone else. I have this challenge. It's humans by far. I often say this. I've got 5 siblings. I've got a wife of 29 years. I've got 6 kids. I've got 3 business partners. I've got 5 staff. I've got 8 franchised offices. And and then all of their retail. It's just, there's so many people up in my grill all the
Mhm.
time. And it just seems like, you know what? Sometimes I'd love to just sit in a beach and forget about the world for a while. Um,
Yeah.
and I know my general contractors feel this way as well. They're like, if it wasn't for people, my business would be awesome. you know, but it's. I mean, how many people do you look after? And then what have you got tips for general contractors who would manage nowhere near as many people as you do? I mean, literally their network of humans would be way less, I would say.
Sure. So, I mean, it varies. Different seasons. I have different managerial duties and responsibilities. Right now, my organization is probably about 10 to 15 people. That's just people that work on education. I don't manage them all directly because I have direct reports that manage them as well. So, like, I think direct reports wise, I probably have about 3 or 4 that manage all of the people on my team. But in my heyday, when I was on the VaynerMedia side of things and I ran AB InBev, like all the beer brands, my organization or my network got up to close to 100 people when I was managing AB InBev, Johnson and Johnson, all those brands. And at that period of time, I'd say that was probably about 4 or 5 years at the height. I had probably about 10 to 15 direct reports or something like that, maybe, between, or like 9 and 12, or it's hard to really remember exactly how many I had back in those days. But, it's easier when you break it down into like manageable chunks for sure. Like understanding the whole team versus like the people that you have to work closest with, and then knowing how to vacillate between, you know, messaging that's designed for large groups versus messaging that's designed for small groups. And I find that like understanding how to be the orchestrator or the conductor of those different various size units is key, and kind of knowing when it's called for to address a larger entity versus talking to your direct reports more in a more intimate setting. So you have to understand there's a different cadence to communication. Like the larger group doesn't need to be addressed at the same interval as maybe your more tight knit group, but then you're also having to like make sure that the kindred and camaraderie that you're building with your direct reports is also being built between your direct reports and their direct reports. And then you also have to see, what does the relationship look like between my departments, right? Creative versus client service versus strategy. And then how is our communication going back and forth with our clients or our clients' customers and stuff like that. So really just stepping out of your own body, if you will, and just looking at the full network and like making sure all of the nodes are connected properly and are working. So you've got to really take a step back, level yourself out, and make sure that your organization is running in a way that's going to be healthy and dynamic.
Yeah, and that's fairly fluid. I mean, that you would literally manage that approach every day, every week. I mean, things change, people's lives change.
When the bigger my organization became, the more I became an HR person. So for sure, and I mean human resources. What that means is I was constantly looking at performance reviews. I was constantly, looking at numbers to make sure that in terms of like our entire workforce, we were as diverse as we could. So we could not only diversity in race, but also in age, gender. I was looking to make sure that we were representative where we needed to be representative of. So like we work with a lot of consumer packaged goods products, which are most of the consumer decision making is driven by moms. So I needed to make sure that we had women that were childbearing years, that were having children and stuff like that. So we weren't, putting marketing out into the universe that didn't make sense for the buyers. So a lot of what I did was, top to top client service work where I'd be meeting with like a CMO here and there. But then outside of that, internally, it became less about the work that I was putting in the market. That era of my life was really when I was working in the car business, when I was like the lead strategist, coming up with ideas, putting campaigns out. When I was on the AB InBev side and the J&J side for Gary, it was almost like an operational role, right? I was constantly looking at HR stuff, constantly, building culture, having meetings, giving speeches, making sure people were motivated by what we were doing and where we were going, trying to figure out how to take Gary's message and really like, maybe maneuver it a standard deviation to the side to be able to be relevant for my crew and make sure that they knew what their job and mission was. So a good example of that is in that era, there was a lot of stuff Gary wanted to talk about and a lot of initiatives he wanted to drive forward, like voice. That was in the era of, Alexa coming out and Google Home and all those things. And I just kept repeating to my team, I was like, we are going to be the best in the world at making videos for mobile devices, these things. And we are going to be the best in the world at distributing videos to these devices. And so really all I was trying to signal to my team was we need to be really great at producing videos that are fit for an iPhone. And we need to go out and get a bunch of paid media accounts and really understand how distribution works. And that's our priority. And over the course of that span, we probably did 400 or 500 videos, probably $8 million a year in digital video revenue. And it's not that was off the agenda for Gary. That was very much on the agenda for Gary, but that's not the only message he was trying to talk about. That's not the only thing he was trying to drive forward. And while I could have, probably partaken in a lot of different initiatives that he cared about, I realized that if we did that thing really well with the collection of talent that we have, these 100 people, then we can advance the agency and we can build a name for ourselves in the digital marketing sphere outside of just Gary's voice, which is also really important for us. So that was kind of my job, is how do I refine Gary's vision and make it relevant for my team to march in a direction.
Yeah. And, I guess where I always watch with interest, I always listen to Gary's podcast with interest because I'm always looking, when is he going to have a GC in a 4Ds, or when is he going to have someone in his podcast? Because the relevance, I've had to work really hard, I think, to transition Gary's message from an agency standpoint that deals with a lot of beer brands and those corporates. And I'm like, and I'm going to really try and middleman the message for our general contractor community, and kind of from their standpoint and apply a little bit of empathy. It's like, right, how do I do what Gary does? Because his message is really motivating and he seems to be, making some progress. How do I do that and it's great that you've got the insight into the general contracting world. Where do I start as a general contractor? So you take all of your corporate knowledge and your corporate experience working with some of those major beer brands. I mean, and this is why I guess that Stork I really liked. As soon as that was dropped on my table, I'm like, that's really cool. And I guess, maybe we could dive deep into that as a bit of a preface before we go into sort of anything micro. But talk to us about what Stork, can you share with us real quick what Stork does and really bring that into, some relevance as far as a general contractor. Why wouldn't we have more general contractors, participating with Stork perhaps?
Sure. Well, so Stork was actually built as a companion piece to the 4Ds. So 4Ds is our major event series. People pay decent money to come join us, whether it's virtual or in person. But we really throw the kitchen sink at people, right? We not only the thing that you see on YouTube is Gary's like 60 minutes or 90 minutes that he has with all the bodies, but we plan a whole day out. There's like, the virtual ones are like 6 hours long. The in-person ones are like 9. And we're teaching you everything from like how to build a personal brand to, how to deal with paid media. We're teaching you about, platform strategy, all the contemporary stuff that, Gary talks about. We blow it out and we give you tons of detail inside of the 4Ds. But what a lot of our alumni were telling us after several years of us doing the 4Ds was that, having all of that information is like drinking from the fire hose, right? It's all good, legitimate information, but if I pack it all into one day, it's hard for me to like consume it and execute against it. So is there a way that you could like drip information out like in a more consistent basis so that we can kind of concentrate and focus on, one thing at a time? And so that was when Stork was born. And Stork was born as a digital subscription membership program. So it's kind of twofold. We've got the content that we actually make and drip out. It's about 5 minutes in length. We release a new video every week. It's all video content because what we find is people don't really want to read articles anymore, right? They don't want to go to Google and search for stuff and read a bunch of articles. They'd rather watch it in video form. But it's the same approach. We want to be able to like create a wealth of different content, pretty much related to anything in the world of business, marketing, advertising, social media, digital, all that kind of stuff, and give you small snackable pieces of content, 5 minutes usually max. And then we leak out a new video every week. We keep them stored in a library. We have over like 120 or 130 videos that we've released in the past year and a half. But then we send the video out to you via an email newsletter every week, as well as we invite you into a Facebook group that's private and closed in. You have to pay to get into the group to be able to be in the Facebook group. And once you're in there, you can see the videos released through that route as well. And the reason we did Facebook groups are twofold. So Facebook groups, when you open up your Facebook Blue app and you go to the groups tab, if you are a member of a group like this, that you're almost going to get 100% viewership from your audience members when you release it through a Facebook group. So that's one of the reasons why we did it, because we wanted to make an easy user experience. When you're leaned back and you're looking at your Facebook app, it's less of a, hey, like go into Facebook and like, look around and try to look at all these videos kind of thing. But then there's also a little bit of a community aspect to it as well. Like there's other people in Stork and other people in our 40s alumni Facebook group that are in a similar position to you. And in terms of being a small business owner or whatever. So a lot of times, people are throwing questions up and other people from the community are answering before I even get a chance to go in there. But the other benefit that Stork gives you is, that anytime you ask a question, that gets on my radar screen as well, because I run the 4Ds and I'm in there at least once a day, looking at the 40s alumni group and looking at Stork. So if the videos don't satisfy your need for what you've got going on, you could always reach out via the Facebook group, ping me, tag me in a post, and I can get you an answer. Or I can run into some of the hallways of VaynerX and I can get you a deck that you can look at, like what have you. So if we don't publish something, we can always get it for you. And if enough people want to hear about a certain topic, then I can go off and film an episode on it. So that's kind of what Stork was designed to do. And we made it, it's actually the most affordable product we have in all of VaynerX. It's $300 per year. So, you can't really beat that pricing. And from what I've gathered, just from understanding a lot of the way small business owners do their taxes, and I can't speak for Canada as much as I can for the United States, this is something that would probably be able to be a line item in your tax return that you could write off as an education expense. So just ask for a receipt when you sign up.
So, yeah, look, I think, and as much as guys, GCs like to build shit, I think there's a lot of them that eventually get, maybe a little bit longer in the tooth. They hit that mid-40s thing and they're like, you know what, I got nothing left to prove. I've got, some elementary school age kids that are maybe moving into high school, and all of a sudden priorities change. And so, they get to a point, Joe, where you've been such a good general contractor knocking nails into wood for so long. You've never really educated yourself around business, the financial side and the biz dev side. And then furthermore, now you've got this marketing beast, which you've got to get your head around as well. So there's those two aspects that if you hit mid-40s and you haven't been very good at business development and managing finance, and you haven't paid much attention to how, digital marketing has evolved, you kind of get caught short. So,
well, I would say it's not even about how digital marketing has evolved. The thing that you guys need to be concerned with as general contractors, as home builders, as construction workers, anything like that, it's all about the next generation is coming of age right now to buy houses, to be, to buy leases or to lease corporate space that needs developing and stuff like that. The people that are making key decisions around money at that level, from a home building, they're people like me, like you're talking about people in their 30s and 40s. So you're pretty much millennial and down now, right? So there's still boomers out there spending a lot of money, but like by and large, the people that are spending the most money societally around the world right now are millennials. So you've got to understand how they operate, how they live their lives, how they live their days out. And if you're not where they are, right? A good example is my dad. My dad retired 5 years ago, so this is going to be a little bit less relevant, but the only way he ever marketed was by putting an ad out in the church bulletin every week. And he got plenty of customers that way. But guess what? He would struggle going into the next 10, 20 years because millennials and Gen Z don't go to church as much. They don't look at church bulletins. It's just not on their radar screen nearly as much. So my dad's business, if he didn't figure out a way, if he was a lot younger and he needed to figure out a way to pivot to really be relevant to a much younger audience, he would have had to bring somebody in that would have known how to do that.
Yep. And that's probably where a lot of building companies, where they've got to engage the services of a third party. I mean, that's why you're in business and you do what you do for those major corporates. So give me a bit of a breakdown, because I know where this answer will probably end up, but I've got to ask it anyway. So why wouldn't, if I've got builders and general contractors look at you, you're like, what's going to, no, tell me about, I want you to give me, for our audience and to confirm for me, what's the upside and the downside of using billboards for advertising? Go.
Well, so honestly, I created a Stork video a couple weeks back about B2B marketing, about marketing in general for small businesses. And one of the key phrases that I try to use is by any means necessary. So I'm not one of those guys that's going to sit on my soapbox and tell you, if you're not spending every single dollar you have on social media, then you're wasting your money. But you have to analyze things in a very objective fashion, right? Like billboards are great if they're in the right location. If they're in the wrong location, then they're not great, right? It's just, it's kind of like looking at a sale, right? Like, you've got a wife that comes to you and says, "Hey, honey, I got this pair of shoes. They got a really great deal on them, right?" And you're like, "Okay, well, cool. How much did you save on the shoes?" 75%. Oh, fantastic. That's a great deal. But how much were they originally? Oh, they were $1,000 and I got them for 75% off. Great. So you spent 250. Sure. But did you need the shoes? No. And then you look in the closet and she's got 3 pairs of shoes just like that. So that's what I see when I see wasteful billboards, right? Like, don't get seduced by the offer. Don't get seduced by the percentage off. There's going to be deals out there all over the place in every medium, whether it's magazine ads, billboards, social media. Like, you've got to understand whether or not what you're putting in from a payment perspective is going to give you the bang for the buck on the backside. That's why Gary talks about underpriced attention. It's the reason why he goes to places like TikTok first, and he will be first on Be Real, which is another social network. You should look it up. The reason why he goes to all these networks first and gets famous on them before everybody else is because before they roll out a bunch of ad products, right? He's gonna get 1 million followers on that platform, and then every day he's gonna post content, and 1 million people are gonna see it for free. Right? So what's a better price? You want to pay, $50,000 a month for a billboard, and the price you pay is $50,000, or do you want to just create content over here, and the price you pay is how much money, how much effort you put into the production? But you'll be seen by 1 million people over here for probably less than $50,000, and over here where you have the billboard, you still might be seen by 1 million people because you've got car traffic, whatever kind of traffic. But realistically, when you're sitting in your car going 60 miles an hour, do you really consume that content like you would if face and it's something you're paying attention to? I used to with a lot of my Fortune 500 companies back in the day, I used to call that the difference between active attention and passive attention. Or captive attention for that matter. So active attention is something where like I'm looking at the screen, right? It's in my face. But there might be a podcast on in the background, right? I still am susceptible to hearing that message as well. But really where my focus is right here. So can you think about things in terms of like 3 dimensions, right? It's not just, the thing you create, putting it into an object, and then it's a binary experience no matter what. If I'm putting a billboard ad up, what I'm trying to do is trying to subliminally, the person that commutes the same direction every single day and that's going to pass by my billboard 30 to 60 times, right? Because that's where they commute to and from. I'm trying to brainwash them into like not even knowing they consume my advertising, but then eventually when it matters, I'm going to be in their consideration set, right? So that's what a billboard does. That's what a radio ad does if you do it with enough high frequency. That's what a TV ad does right now. It's subliminal messaging. You're brainwashing them into having your brand in their consideration set. That's not what you're doing when you're on this, right? When you're in their active realm, you're not brainwashing them. You're trying to create relevance with them.
We might break into some, because I was going to get into some, not micro, but maybe some tips for how to create content for general contractors. But if we've got a couple of questions, Joe, we've got one. All right, Dom,
I only have one right now. Like one regarding social media.
Give it to us, mate.
Oh, okay. What social media stream do you focus on when you first start your business?
Honestly, with every question I ever get with this, I always start with it. It depends on what your objective is. But I would say a good rule of thumb is it's not going to hurt you by going into all the different platforms, right? Like that it's not overkill to be on every single platform. How much time and energy you put into creating content for them is a different story altogether. But I would first and foremost get your business set up on everything, because you want to make sure you own the rights to the name and all of the stuff in case anything becomes relevant to you. Don't get yourself boxed out of having the appropriate name that you want by waiting to get a profile set up on a different platform. Set it up at the very least. Get a profile pick up there, get a description, maybe post a few pieces of content. That way, if people are searching for you on the internet, all these apps are starting to index on Google. So you want to own your name on every social platform. So that's number one. Number two, I would do a blend of like organic and paid options, right? So chances are, if you're not very familiar with social media, I know your motivations. They're probably going to be monetary. You want to figure out a way to get customers and leads and all that kind of stuff. A great way to do that as a general contractor right now is to go on a platform like Nextdoor and put advertising into it. Look at their ad units, saturate the zip codes that you care about. Another great platform, and this is more on a digital spectrum. You can look at different kinds of apps and websites that are around home services, like Angie's Lists and stuff like that. There's different ways that you can play in those types of platforms. Anything that's about ratings and reviews, you want to be able to make sure, like a Google for My Business page. That's another thing. Make sure you're setting up your Google for My Business page. And then in terms of social networks in general, I would be in your space, the thing that really matters a lot. I think you're kind of adjacent to the real estate industry, to be honest with you. So I
Okay.
think Instagram is going to be important. I think Facebook is going to be important to you guys, but in different ways. Remember their follower graphs. The algorithms are based on followers. So you're going to want to incentivize people that you work with. Everyone that you do a job for, you should try to get them to follow your page. Everybody that you connect with that has a customer service question, that comes into or that calls you, you should be asking for a follow on those platforms, right? Because it's follower based. TikTok is interest based. You should be on TikTok because I think it's important, but it's not going to give you the results that you're probably looking for right away. It's not going to give you a ton of leads. It's not going to start driving your business from a monetary and a revenue perspective immediately. But there's more chances to go viral on TikTok than any other platform. So, and what I mean, and why that would be relevant to you is that where I see a lot of small businesses winning on TikTok right now is they have a breakout piece of content that goes extremely wide. Like it's relevant. It gets seen by 100,000 or 1 million people across the US or Canada or international. And you may think that that's a waste of all those eyeballs, but it's actually really not, because the after effect after something goes viral becomes more micro, right? There's an example of, I read an article yesterday about a kid out in Utah. His dad's lifelong dream was to create a Mexican restaurant in Utah. So they did, but then for like 30 days, they had no customers and they were about to go out of business. And the kid went out there and he put like sad face TikTok of his dad, like his dad's dreams crashing and burning. And then all of a sudden it went viral. Millions of people across the US saw it. In probably 10 to 30,000 people that are in the state of Utah started driving from all over the state to go eat at their Mexican restaurant. And now it's a cult classic. It's like the restaurant's probably not in any danger of going out of business, but it wouldn't have had that success if not for TikTok. So is it easy to predict virality? No. Is it easier on TikTok than other platforms? Yes, because of the way the algorithm's designed. It's completely interest-based, which means every single post that you put out on TikTok, not when you look at the views on TikTok compared to the views on an Instagram, whereas Instagram is mainly going to be seen by people that are already following you, TikTok is going to be seen 9 out of 10 of the views are going to be by net new people, because it's just going to keep popping your video into the recommendation engine. Like basically, you put a video out, TikTok tests it out amongst like 1 to 300 people, right? If you get a lot of views, if you get a lot of engagement on that 1 to 300 people, they'll elevate it. They'll release it to 1 to 5,000 people, right? And if your video still has momentum amongst 1 to 5,000 people, good engagement, good view through, people are watching the videos all the way through, they're watching it multiple times, they'll start to release it to a larger pool. So that's how you go viral on TikTok. It's way different than on those other platforms. And if you understand how the interest graph works, it's easier for you to hack it.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, being a bit of a Gary fan, I mean, Gary says you've got to do 2 to 4 pieces of content on TikTok a day. Guess what I do on Monday morning? Right, team, this is what we got to do. And they then throw it back to me and say, well, we need some tips for general contractors video. Get cracking. So, and I got to be honest, it's, that the words land grab is what I might have heard from Gary at some point. And knowing full well that I didn't grasp Snapchat, in those early days, it's, I think there's a lot of focus on, like you said, if you want to monetize on TikTok as far as getting clients, it may not work out like that. But certainly the traffic and the branding, and then maybe the call to action, but you've got to build that group first.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing you can do if you, it's in terms of building brand, what's to stop you from building a brand that it could be an e-commerce brand? Like if you're really proud of your name, if you're proud of what you do, if you're proud of your work ethic, if you're proud of your sayings, if your CEO has like a really good perspective on life, why couldn't you make t-shirts and hats and bumper stickers? And why couldn't you sell them online? Why couldn't you have a Shopify page? Why couldn't you? And then TikTok makes even more sense, because then you can go out and you can optimize your paid ads towards follower count, and you could build a following, and then you could sell merch, right? Like, you think about the ambition that you have. Do you always want to be a local contractor, or do you want to do something bigger than that? Do you want to create a network of contracting do you want to get 100 GCs under your watch so that you can operate in every single province in Canada or every single city in Canada, right? If you do that, then the importance of brand is going to be a lot bigger. You're going to need to have a, a central set of identifying, things that live above that, whether it's a face of the franchise, a logo, a color palette, ways you talk, ways you behave, ways you interact, and then your brand becomes bigger than just the thing that you do in your market. It becomes the thing that you do for all of Canada or all of North America or the world, right? Like, that's just something that you're going to have to think about on the extreme long horizon. Like, how ambitious are you?
Yeah. And the evolution of it, the way that I interact with social media or digital or, it does change. It evolves in my own mind. The way I saw it 2 years ago is I'm looking at completely different, today. So probably, realize that I got to work a lot harder to do, to project the messaging and the information and everything like that. So, and certainly the content. Have we got another question?
I don't know how relevant it is, but Flanagan's asked, how would you pitch copywriting services to clients within the trades? I don't know how.
Okay, so he's coming from outside the general contractor community.
I think so.
And he's wanting to pitch copywriting trades.
Copywriting services,
which builders for the most part can't spell. So that's probably.
Yes.
So Joe, I mean, let's try and answer that question. Even though he's not a GC, he's like, I want to pitch GCs. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, thinking from your guys' perspective, one of the things that is always done, and the thing of, you asked a question earlier, like why when is a GC going to be in a 4Ds? They've already been in 4Ds. They're just not the same GCs that you're used to thinking about.
Right.
Think about the world of like an advertising agency right now. I'm a GC in a lot of ways. I put together projects sometimes I need to bring in subcontractors that do things that my agency doesn't do. So there are people that come in that have to wear the hat of a GC sometimes. And a lot of Gary's questions are perfectly relevant to a GC. But kind of going back to the question at hand, like how would I sell to a GC essentially?
Because I don't think the GC is actually going to understand. It's like, what is that, and why do I like? They don't have like. There's a lot of education by the copywriter to really demonstrate to the general contractor why those services might be relevant.
Right. I mean, I would take it a step back, and because copywriting is just a means to an end to me. It's no different than like strategy or design or vertical videos or production, or if you're trying to sell some sort of service to a GC, the way that you make it relevant to them is what I've already told you, Max. You got to tell them that, like, look, the world is changing and your customers are getting younger, and you need to understand these people. You don't right now, but I do. Right. So a good thing, when Gary talks about like supply and demand on social networks, I'm sure you've listened to some of his podcasts lately. He's been hammering Facebook fan page for like 2 or 3 weeks now, and not just anything on Facebook fan page, long form copy on Facebook fan page. Right. So that's an opportunity right there for a copywriter is, hey, look, you've got all these marketers or all these GCs that maybe think they know a thing or two about social media. Well, they don't know what I know about social media, and they've been stuck probably listening to Gary episodes from 2017, and they're still trying to figure out how to produce TikToks. So I'm going to come in and tell them, hey, the next big thing in social media for the next year is going to be Facebook fan pages, specifically quote cards that have always succeeded on Instagram or LinkedIn, long form copy. I'm great at that stuff. You need to hire me, or you need to contract out with me, pay me a retainer, and let me do all your writing for you. Like that's, I think just being on the bleeding edge of what's relevant is going to be the way you sell to a GC. You've got to always play to the fact that they're busy being a GC. They don't know how to spend their time being a digital marketer, right?
And it's like this. Why would a general contractor go and do the plumbing on a project? Oh, he doesn't do that. That's right. He engages the services of a professional plumber. But when it comes to marketing, oh, no, I'll do that. Like, why wouldn't they find someone that
I would
can
probably
facilitate?
think of it from a copywriting perspective specifically is, look, take this TikTok live that we're on, or whatever, Instagram, YouTube, whatever platforms we're on that are live. I could take this content right now, where we're at 70 minutes right now. I could take this content right now and we could transcribe it on something like Otter AI into all words. And then I could go in and I could strip out all the ums and the stuff that doesn't really matter, all the fluff, and I could get it just to the relevant copy, right? But then I could go in and I could look for the most poignant things that either one of us has said in the whole time. I could isolate those pieces of content. I could take them out. I could put them into, like, let's say it's 50 words. I could put it into a nicely arranged visual and put that into a graphic on Canva. And then I can download that graphic from Canva and I can send you the ad that you need to place. Right. I can send you your next piece of social media content, right? like that's an easy way to go attack a GC. Literally just show them some free work.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. All right. Got another question. Who's it from and what is it?
Michael Miller.
Michael Miller, okay. Side note, Michael Miller is one of my franchise general contractors. So he's on vacation at the moment. I'm not sure what he's doing watching us. But, okay, what's the question, Michael?
How would you transition marketing over to the next generations?
Okay.
You so can have younger people? You mean people that are coming up, maybe like sons, daughters, that kind of thing? Or
yeah, I think that's what he's trying to get at. Yeah.
I think you mean, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't pretend that I know more than that. I think they probably know more than you. So I would just get out of their way and let them take it in whatever direction they want to take it in. Because I would say, like, maybe there's a little bit of give and take there, right? Because you got to be checking some boxes, right? You need to be able. I think the things that you're not going to want to do, or the things that you're going to have to do, things like Instagram and Facebook are going to be like, it's going to be. For the next 5 years, it's going to be like plumbing, right? It's something you don't want to do, but you have to do. The house doesn't work if the plumbing doesn't work, right? But, you know, the things like TikTok and Be Real and these platforms that are up and coming, that's the curb appeal stuff. That's your house. That's the front of your house. That's the landscaping. That's the front door. That's all that kind of stuff. They're both important, right? Like a beautiful house with no plumbing is a shitty house. So you focus on the things that you've already spent a bunch of time focusing on, because they'll still be relevant for a while, but don't ignore the front of the house. Don't ignore the curb appeal, you know, and let the next generation of people come up and guide you on those.
Yeah, well, the guy asking the questions, I mean, he's my micro content producer and he's an 19-year-old, my bad. Yeah. He can go to the pub now. But, you know, he showed a lot of interest as a teen, and we just kind of threw him in the deep end, and he gravitated to it, and he freaking loves it, and he can't believe he gets paid for doing this shit. So that's my personal experience. And then I've got another daughter that works with me in the next room, does a lot of copy and does franchise sales. So I never did get him in a headlock and make him do anything. It's just the way it seems.
And that's the thing that you got to take advantage of. Like when you're looking for people, like let's just say people didn't naturally come to you and you had to find more people to do this kind of work. There's a major imbalance in terms of like who actually has the skill and who agencies and brands are looking for, right? Agencies and brands typically always put they honestly, they literally fuck it up. They try to figure out who's got the most experience, but they discount the fact that somebody that, you know, that might have the experience that you need might have got that experience starting at age 12, right? Like if I'm 12 years old and I care about video editing and I carry that string all the way through and I practice making videos until I'm 20, I've got 8 years of experience editing videos. Why would a 20-year-old with 8 years of experience be any worse than a 32-year-old? You know, like you can get them much cheaper. Like, why wouldn't you actually trust a 20-year-old that's been editing videos for 8 years? But most people start looking at talent when they graduate from college, and that's wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, do we have any more questions? We hit the bottom of the barrel. Look, I think it's great. Like I've got an hour and 10 minutes on my what's the name here. So Joe, look, that's been superb. We really appreciate you taking time out to chat with us. I feel very honored to have had you on the show, and you know I'm hoping that the content is going to bring a lot of folks some value. And when you see Gary next, can you say hello to him for me?
Sure. And make sure you send over this content to me, and I'll try to post it, and maybe I can try to drum up some interest of GCs on the 4Ds, and you can have your wish.
Totally, that would be that'd be pretty entertaining. Alrighty, we shall wrap up. We've got nothing because I know this. I did this last time. I shut it down. We locked, boom. We got out of the lives, and then people started asking questions. But I think we'll probably leave it go. Look, just to wrap up the podcast, thanks for sticking with us. all the normal housekeeping, like and subscribe and hit the bell. And we'll see you on the next episode. Go and build a kick-ass business. Cheers.